Hello there everyone, and welcome to another Skyrim how-to. I am your host, Porterhouse, and that's no bull. Hey everyone, Porterhouse here, and this video is going to be a continuation of my basic how-to guide for making screenshots. Now in my last video I had covered lighting /ENBs, camera controls, working with NPCs /followers, and finally poses. Well, that basic guide turned into a 45-minute video, and I still found myself wanting to add more. Well, this video is the more. And once again, it is geared more towards the beginner and less the pro screen archer. Also, just so you know, this will be less of a guide and more of a run-through of mods that I think will help you make terrific screenshots and maybe spark your imagination. In this edition, I will be talking about locations, both vanilla and modded, props, utility mods, and a bit about console commands. These are all things that I find important to making a good screenshot into a great screenshot. Now first up is location. Let's say you have your character all dressed up, you find the perfect pose, the perfect expression, but then you take it in the middle of Whiterun. I mean, it may still look good, but maybe it would have looked better taking it inside of one of the dungeons, or maybe in a crowded, I was going to say tavern. You know, Porterhouse goes to a lot of bars. Anyway, just think about what you have in the background as well as your characters. So now with the modded version of Skyrim with a good ENB, there are a ton of places already that make for great screen caps, like some of the places I just mentioned. Now, for example, places like the Dustman's Cairn, Labyrinthian, Blackreach, the Soul Cairn, and several of the Dwemer ruins have good lighting and a lot of little spots that can convey a dark and dangerous mood. Some of them can be quite beautiful depending on how your game is set up. Now, once you start looking for these places, there is no end to vanilla locations that can make great backdrops to take screenshots. You can also reach areas that may no longer be available to you normally using the COC command, including Sovngarde and Skuldafn, but we'll be talking about that a little later. Next up, there are mods that modify locations that range from simple retextures to full-blown rebuilds of areas. Now, I'm not going to go into detail with each of these mods. These are basically recommendations to make your game look aesthetically pleasing and to make your screenshots look superb. Now, keep in mind that the choice of mods is my opinion. You may have other mods that you prefer, and that's fine. Everybody has their own tastes. This is just my way of getting you to think about locations you may not have thought about using before to make your screenshots. Now, before we get rolling here, I do want to say that a lot of these mods can be FPS intensive, so use them judiciously. For retexture mods, I want to start out with Noble Skyrim by Shudder, which has been my go-to mod for retexturing almost all of Skyrim, and has been for years now. Now, on my older computer, I have the Performance Edition. My machine was pretty good, still is actually, but I went with the Performance Edition just to save on the FPS. Now, on my newer computer, I went with the Full Edition, and I have not noticed any FPS loss on that, but that computer does have an RTX 2070 in it, so just pick which version you use carefully. Now, either version can be used with Broombeck's Static Mesh Improvement mod, which is a huge improvement over the melted crayon meshes of vanilla Skyrim. Once you see what that does, you'll understand what I mean. Now, the next two mods I want to talk about, I have not personally used, but I have it on good authority, at least in the case of the first one, that it is a very good texture mod. Now, the first one is Tameriel Reloaded by 32CM. Now, this was a recommendation that comes from one of my very good friends and Discord members, Froggy. She sent me a ton of screenshots. I'm liking what I'm seeing. This looks like a really good mod. It also comes in several variations and has a ton of options to fine-tune your experience. Now, the second one I want to talk about is the Skyrim Community Texture Project by Dawn Protein. Now, this is a conglomeration of several people's works, And not only does it change the terrain, but it changes other things, including armor and weapons. The mod contains a ton of retextures from a lot of mod authors, including Crazy Lion and Zero King, whose work I have actually covered in my past videos. Now, I don't know anyone who personally uses this, but I did poke around in the forums, and this mod has gotten a wonderful reception, and I've actually been thinking about switching to it myself. Next up, I want to talk about a really superb mod that modifies the back porch of the Skyhaven Temple. The mod is called Skyhaven Temple Gardens and was made by a talented modsmith named Albro. Now, Albro turned the drab, ugly back part of the temple into something really beautiful with a Akaviri theme with a pond and lanterns and lots of little nooks and crannies. There's this beautiful cherry blossom tree. It is really gorgeous, and it's a great location to take screen caps, and it has been in my mod list for at least a year or more. Now, speaking of modifying locations, there is no one, in my opinion, that does it better for the cities than Soldier of War with the Great Cities mod. Now, he used to do these in separate mods. Now it's all in one mod, and this encompasses changes to Dawnstar, Dragonbridge, Falkreath, Morthal, Rorikstead, and Winterhold. The modsmith turned these areas that used to look like they were thrown together on a whim over a week into something that looks like a real city. And consequently, they have become great locations to take some really epic screenshots. Now, for dungeons, now there are some mods out there that will modify the vanilla dungeons. The one I have adds more dungeons. This is Hammett's Dungeon Pack by Venge Hammett. And this is a mod that adds new locations for adventures and exploration while also adding some really excellent settings for getting some great screen caps that will impart a sort of dark and dangerous situation. Now, Venge is really an excellent mod creator, and aside from the beautiful settings, the Dungeon Pack is an excellent series of locations for some fun gameplay. Now, I will warn you, the dungeons can be a bit dark, so refer to my first video on lighting. Now, finally, I want to talk about GomaPero land. Now, GomaPero went all out and created a whole new world space that is just huge. This is just a giant source of places for taking screen caps. There's swimming pools, beaches, cozy little cottages, spas, castles, gardens, ponds, and so much more. The entire mod is literally made for screen archery, and there are a ton of themed locations, and you just need to download this, go there, and check it out. I'm sure that you will find something that you enjoy. Next up, I want to talk about props. Now, when I say props, I'm talking about mods that add things like wings, horns, jewelry, tongues, halos, area effects, and other things that will help you achieve a certain look. Now, I'm not going to go into jewelry mods. There's so many out there for you to take a look at. I couldn't make up my mind about which one I wanted to feature, and I'm sure you would have different tastes than me, but you're literally just go search the Nexus and you will find a ton of those. Now, of the mods I'm going to go into, I'm just going to do a few, and the list, though, of stuff that you can use is nearly endless, and that's thanks to the hard work of a lot of talented modders out there. And you are seriously only a Google search away from finding a cornucopia of things that you can use in your screenshots. Now, starting off with horns, my personal favorite is Ornate Dremora horns by Billyro. Now, these also count, well, it's a wearable item, but it also counts as armor, and it comes in both light and heavy. Another good one is TDN Equipable Horns by Nightshade, and this has a gigantic variety of horns in it. And I have seen some tremendous screenshots made using that particular mod, so it is a good one. I used to have it myself. I don't have it any longer. Not because I didn't like it, I just had to skinny down my mod list. Now, finally, we have Angelic Halos and Demonic Horns by Volvaga, which, as the name implies, also has halos in it as well as horns. Now, for wing mods, we have Animated Dragon Wings by Anton, which is a really interesting mod. I absolutely love the way this turned out. and it gives you a collection of different types of dragon wings that will actually move even while your character is idling, but even more so when you're running, jumping, and sneaking. And you can use it with, I believe it's pronounced Perun's flying mod, to do a flying animation. It's very cool. My other favorite wing mod is Angels in Skyrim by Vyxenne. Now, Vyxenne made these with assets from Favored Soul. And this is an absolute beautiful little mod. It only has the 2 feathery sets in them, one in black, one in white, and while they are not animated, they are still an epic accessory. Tongue mods. Now, I know that sounds weird as heck, but they do exist and can add a fun twist to a screen cap. Now, one of my mainstays has always been Htongues by Halo. And this has a ton of different tongues set at different heights on the face to match your character's mouth or your NPC's mouth and expression. Halo also made another fun little mod called Lizard Tongues for that other than human look. Now finally we have my new favorite, which is Wraith Tongues by Artsick. Now this is a fun little mod that adds 19 creepy looking tongues for that macabre and scary aesthetic look for your character. The mod comes in 2 flavors. One is a normal version, which is a bit like Halo's, where you just get what you get as far as the heights. And then there is an NiOverride pose adjustment version that allows you to use the mod by that name to position the tongue in your character's mouth. Now, I will be covering the NiOverride pose adjustment mod a little later. Now, moving on, one of my favorite mods for that special touch for a screenshot is Particle Fields by Keung. I think that's how that's pronounced. This mod adds a number of equipable items that, when used, generate a particle field that surrounds your character. Now, these fields include feathers, black and white, there's bubbles, different types of petals, leaves, cinders, fogs, dandelion seeds, and floating lights that add just a little bit of extra spice to your screenshot. So that's it for the props that I want to talk about. There's so many more out there. You just need to go look. Trust me, you'll find a ton of really good things to play with. Next up, I want to talk about utility mods. Now, these are mods that will help you fine-tune your game for that perfect screenshot. Now, the first one I want to mention is the Weather Spell by Sheo, aka Malli. Now, this is a neat little mod that straight up allows you to control the weather using a spell. From sunshine to snowstorm, you can set the weather conditions and even use weather from Sovngarde and the Soul Cairn anywhere. This is perfect for setting the mood, whether it be a picnic by a stream or a trek across haunted lands. Now, speaking of handy mods, if you're like me, you hate sorting through your game looking for a certain item to use in a screenshot, well, a handy little mod called AddItemMenu by Towawat will solve that problem for you. The mod is essentially a ESP file explorer, and what you can do is you can browse through the usable contents of a mod, like, for example, Billyro's, and you can see all the usable items in it, so all of his swords, and you can then take that out of that ESP and place them in your inventory, so you don't have to go to the forge or go digging through the contents of trunks, barrels, and wardrobes looking for a certain item. It is very, very handy. Now, the next mod I want to talk about has recently become one of my favorites. This is NiOverride Pose Adjustments by Sesamin. I think that's how that's pronounced. This has been a real gem for me, and I will explain why. Now, my ladies, my original characters, tend to be more curvy in their physique, and there were a ton of poses that I couldn't use because of clipping. You know, their hands or arms would clip through other parts of their body or through the clothing and armor that they were wearing. Well, and then there were also some poses I wouldn't use because the creator made them a bit extreme for my taste. Now, I'm not saying they were bad, but just, you know, the angle of a neck or something just looked a little odd to me. Well, with this pose adjustments tool, you can change the positioning of just about every body part. Now, honestly, I have only scratched the surface of all the options of this mod. I've used it mainly to change the position of arms and the head. But there is so much more that you can dig into, and the mod author has a nice little web page that you can go to see what all the controls are, and I'll be sure to post that link below. Now, I'm going to show you guys a little clip so you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, folks, I'm going to show you a little bit of the NIO pose override. I have a nice sunny location. Tish is standing on top of one of the semi-sunken towers at Atlanta's Deep, and she is shielding her eyes from the sun. However, her left hand is clipping through the armor on her left hip. So what I will do is I will activate the NIO pose override, and I'm going to choose upper body, and then her left upper arm. And then I'm going to use the Y key and the arrow keys, oops, wrong one, to move her hand out a little bit until I can see the whole thing. And move it back just a tad. And there we are. Her hand is now resting on her armor and not directly on her hip. Looks a lot better. I hit my H key using the Better Free Cam tool. Center her a little bit and then take my shot. Now, one of the things you have to remember after you're done is to make sure you cancel all those changes by hitting the 0 key, and that will return your character's skeleton back to normal. Now, you can also use this on NPCs. You can select from target the nearby NPCs. You can then remove them from the list, that kind of thing. And I've used that too, and it works pretty well. It does take some practice to use, I'm not going to lie, but you can adjust so much in this, and it's ridiculous. And I actually haven't played with all of it. I've basically just done hands and arms, and I've changed the position of Tish's head, so like if she was standing over somebody, she was looking down at them. So you can adjust the head, and let me show you that real quick. Let's say she was standing over somebody and was looking down at them. I can make her head... oops, sorry. Let's not do that. That was a little weird. You can make her head go down, up. You can shift the position of it a little bit. It is really a very handy tool, but like I said, it does take some practice to use, but it is highly recommended. And just to make sure, once again, hit that 0 key when you're done, and that'll reset all of your bones and everything's back to normal. So that's all there is to it. I will warn you once again that it does take some practice to use, and either save your game before you start using this mod, or be sure to cancel all the modifications afterward, or your character's going to look pretty odd, just saying. Next up, I want to talk about Race Menu. Now, this is an often overlooked tool for making really cool screenshots in Skyrim. And it's neat because you can make those changes and then revert back to your preset and continue on gaming. Now, for example, some friends of mine expressed a desire to see my character made Littlefire as a demoness. I don't remember why. I just did it for them. But anyway, I fired up Race Menu, changed her skin tone, I changed her eyes, her hair, added some tattoos and some other things, and after that I saved it, and then I added horns, wings, and voila, we had Demoness made. Now, don't be afraid to play in Race Menu, but always save a copy of your preset before you change anything, just as a precaution. Also, I would suggest giving it a unique name, because the naming scheme in Race Menu looks all the same when you're looking at a big row of them, so give it a unique name as well. Now, I imagine that you can do something very similar with ECE, but I have actually never used that tool, so I'm not sure. So if you have a friend that has ECE and is pretty knowledgeable, ask them, or even peruse the forums and maybe ask a question if you're not sure. So anyway, that's it for the mods. Next, I want to talk about a few console commands that I think you will find useful. Many of you probably already know these, but I want to go over them one more time just in case. All right, the first command I want to talk about is the TCL, or toggle collision. Now this is a handy command that you can use to literally walk through walls or even up into the air to get to locations for a screen cap. And it also has other uses. If you're like me and you have a lot of followers and they crowd around you in an area and you can't get through a door, you can toggle the collision and walk right through them and then toggle it back on again. And it is really easy to use. You simply open the console, type in TCL, and then you hit enter. Collision is now off. You can walk through walls and into the air, as I was saying. If you want to go up, you look into the direction that you want to go and just start walking. When you get to the location where you wanted to go, you open the console again, type in TCL, and collision is back on. Now, next, I want to talk about the set game hour command, which you can use to change the time of day. And that is really easy to use. You open the console, type in set space game hour space 2 space followed by a number between 0 and 23. Now Skyrim time is based on a 24-hour clock, so if you are looking to make it 1 p.m. you would use a 13 as the new numerical value, so it would be set game hour to 13. But you may be asking, why would you want to do this in the first place? Well, this allows you to, if you're taking an outdoor screenshot, to set, well, even in some cases for indoor ones where you have lots of windows, what this does is allows you to set the natural light angles for an optimum. So if you wanted to have, sort of a warm, bright light, you would probably set it for a morning or evening, or really bright light, you would set it for noon, that kind of thing. And you can experiment going up and down the time scale and seeing which lighting works best for you. Now, it'd also be handy if you were trying to get a night shot and you wanted to have Tameriel's moons in the backgrounds. Well, you can advance a little bit at a time until you get the moons in the optimum location for a screenshot. Now, I've also found that you can use decimals to fine-tune the time. So, for instance, if you wanted to set the time to 3:30 p.m., you would use set game hour to 15.5. And that would give you 3:30. So that's really easy to do. Now, lastly, there is the COC, or change of cell command, which you can use to teleport to a location as long as you know the cell name. Now, I use that command to get to places like Sovngarde and Skeldafn, since once you have done those the playthrough, you cannot get back to those through normal fast travel. It's also handy to get to areas that you would otherwise have to spend a fair amount of time trekking across the landscape and through dungeons to get to. Like I said, as long as you know the cell name, you can instantly transport to them. Now, in the description below, I will include a website that has a searchable list of the cell names. So as long as you know the basic location you wanted to go to, you just enter that, search, and it would give you a number of locations based on cell names, so you could pick precisely where you wanted to go. Well, now that we have covered locations, the retextures, rebuilds, props, and commands, well, now what do? Well, this is the part where your imagination takes over and you start putting things together for yourself. I'm hoping I gave you a good nudge in the right direction. Go nuts, experiment, mix and match with outfits, armors, props, effects, and locations, and see what you can come up with. Now, if you're looking for outfits and armor that have a theme to them, two of the best modders out there for that sort of thing are Nini and Melodic, and they do have a Patreon page. They both also put the base outfits that they do sometimes out there for free for you to download. So just do some searching. They have some really neat, cool armors and some fun themed clothing, like Ninrim does or Nini, I should say, does a cat girl, maid outfit that was kind of cute, that I know a lot of people really like. Not really my thing, but it was still a neat little thing that he did. So anyway, hopefully you found this guide useful and it sparked a few ideas for your own screenshots. Now, if you go out and you use my advice, and you, feel free to tweet the results at me. I'd be curious to see how your stuff turned out. If you need advice, you can tweet to me as well on Twitter, and I will put my link to my Twitter account down below in my description, and it is also on the banner on my YouTube channel page. So anyway, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed this video and you found it useful, please remember to hit that like button, drop me a comment, and subscribe to my channel if you have not already done so. Once again, I'm your host, Porterhouse, and I will see you all at the next video.